All right, back in the car, heeding the turn signal button idea more with each intersection. I feel like I am a BMW driver who signals compulsively, and I always have. I just don't understand why you wouldn't. Signals are there to communicate with other drivers, and I don't understand why you wouldn't use them if they're in the car. So I'm one of those BMW drivers who is, contrary to the jokes about BMW drivers, always using my signals. This car makes it so I don't want to use the signals, and I can immediately tell that as I approach intersections, drivers are like, what's he about to do? Where is he going? Which I'm not used to. I'm usually very clear in my intentions. So this car is making me a more, more prickish driver, and I'm having to struggle to hit the correct button. That's the other thing. Orienting it where I've said this before, I've said this on my Twitter, I've said this elsewhere. If they had done right signal right hand, left signal left hand, which I don't doubt that they will make that change at some point because it's just a better idea. If they had done that, the system might work. But as it is now, stacking them vertically, super dumb. Super dumb. Up should be more, like for cruise control or volume. Down should be less, cruise control or volume. Left and right, even if it was on the left side of the wheel and they were oriented so the left one was near the rim and the right one was not, even that would be preferable to this. So yeah, I've already spent too much time on this topic, so moving on. What else? It's a car. It's a Model 3. It's a Tesla. All obvious things, but I don't know. Here I am now, having said that the last car needed more refinement, saying that, well, it doesn't really have adequate refinement is the problem, because it's still kind of thumpy over bumps. You can only do so much, and they've done a lot. It's agreeable, I'd say. It's an agreeable car now. It was a disagreeable car before. It's an agreeable car now. I think a lot of people are going to be happy in it. A lot of people could be happy in it. Is it a car that puts a smile on my face, like driving a BMW i3? Not at all. Is it a car that puts a smile on my face, like driving an Ioniq 5? Not at all. There are a number of electrics that do put a smile on my face, and will put a smile on your face in a way that this does not. Even when I give it full throttle and send it coming out of a stoplight, it doesn't have enough of the oh my gosh factor, to really excite or entertain. And that's kind of troubling. It's like Tesla, you can tell Tesla's not that good at what they do. And by what they do, I mean building cars for a number of reasons. But one of those reasons I'm going to add to the list is they've fallen into that we can do sport or we can do comfort. Take your pick. You know what made BMW great? You know what makes Porsche great? You know what makes a lot of car companies great? You can do both well in one car. That takes really clever engineers. I think these engineers were told, make it isolated, make it numb, make it agreeable, as I said. It ends up feeling, I'd say, it certainly feels better than a first generation product probably would from, say, a Chinese maker. But you end up with this, it's very bland, and I doubt I'll remember this drive like I've remembered driving many other cars. Like, to describe this car to you, I'm finding challenging. To describe this car to others, I will find challenging. And when I say, it's a car, it's a Tesla, like, it's doing the job, but it's doing the job in a way that like a Corolla does the job. Now that might be a great thing, right? Corolla is a great selling car. So they may have cracked it. This might be what the everyman, the common person, I don't know how you say it, the populace wants. This might be a car that sells really well, but then you've got this turn signal stock, and you've got this really, from a design standpoint, like aesthetically, just cheap looking, cheap feeling interior. I shouldn't say cheap feeling. The feeling is not cheap. It's actually, they've resolved that issue. I'll give them that. But even the blind spot monitor, it's now kind of hidden in the speaker grill, and it's sort of too subtle. So that might be the lesson here. Tesla, largely owned and run by Elon Musk, is now too subtle. Tesla, too subtle. That's very off-brand for them. The steering, I will say, I want to give some props to the folks who worked on the steering, because both the steering and the regen are not really calling attention to themselves in the way they were before, and I think that's a compliment. That said, like, before, I feel like the feel of the wheel itself as a component was unobjectionable, but the feel that you got from the mechanism was quite objectionable. Now, those two have reversed. The weighting, the response, things like that from the wheel, from the mechanism, pretty well judged. Not a lot to fault there. I mean, I don't love it, but it's again, competent. The wheel, though, this is the problem with Tesla and design. They focus so much on appearances, and they don't focus on experiences. I've said this before, I'll say it again. The feeling of touching this wheel is kind of awful. Like, I'm not gonna say it any other way. Like, it's lumpy, it's got ridges on it in weird places, it's got this squared off bottom that's not really too squared off, which might make it easier to get in and out of the car, but it makes it feel strange when you're rotating it. This car feels like it was done in CAD. This car feels like it was done in software. This car doesn't feel like a person who cared about driving, sat with it, spent time with it, gave it as much thought as I've given it in the last 30 minutes. So, that's very much on brand for Tesla. And I commend their effort, I really do. I'm kind of flabbergasted that they hit so many things on my wish list and maybe even over-indexed from where I thought they would be able to take an old aging platform and refresh it. Because this is an old aging car and it needed a refresh immediately after launch. They've now done that, so props to them. But unfortunately, they've made the exterior styling, the interior styling, and the experience somehow both more and less compelling. And I expected more on the more side, and I didn't expect so much less on the less side. Maybe that's on brand for Tesla too, I don't know. But if you've driven this thing, I'd like to know what you thought. I'm about to hand it back without any hesitation. I'm okay with that. I think I will get a more extended drive on roads that are less grid-like and suss out more of the dynamics, and if there's an enjoyment to be had from this thing that wasn't there before. I'm also curious if it has the kind of Jekyll and Hyde, like twitchy, scrappy, not at all like resolved feeling of the last Model 3 that I drove, where it felt so out of control. I felt like I was going to take out a pedestrian without meaning to. Oh, one more thing. I think the screen in the back is super dumb, and I'll go into that and the why of why it's super dumb, and maybe in a different installment. But what I don't think is super dumb, and what I'm very much in agreement with, is they've added cooled seats up front, and that is something that, again, there's a focus on comfort here, and they've certainly achieved that. I think the things that impress the average person and make them feel like they gotta, now it feels more like a, I wouldn't say a luxury product, but I'd say it now feels more like a product that has comfort as one of its qualities, and that's not something I've said about any Model 3 or Model Y in the past. So a more fitting alternative, a more fitting and capable car, but I'm still having difficulty with this vis-a-vis some alternatives that that one can also buy on the market that don't feel as dated and dull. So that's it for me. Would love to know what you think. And am I being too harsh? Am I being too harsh on this car? Is it actually, have they actually cracked it? Have they actually done what they were supposed to do? I don't know. I hope so. I do want to see them succeed and get things right. I really do. I'm still on the inside a fan of upstart companies. I spend my career helping such companies, and I would love to be able to, Elon aside and ethics aside and all this history that Tesla has created for itself as a toxic brand, as much as it is a technological brand. Those are things I'm not comfortable with, and I don't want them to be permanent blemishes and scars on this company. I'd like to see them change course and maybe even change leadership. But that said, this car, huge improvement, huge kudos to those who worked on it. I'm so thankful that they did the job they did. It's finally to the point where I think people could be happy in it, and I'm not going to be like kicking and screaming, please don't do it, please don't get it, like I did before. But at the same time, I think I'll still be kicking and screaming, please don't do it without looking at some alternatives. And I think those alternatives are simply more compelling. But more time with the car needed. 30 minutes is, that's my impression about after 30 minutes of driving, and I hope to dimensionalize that more with some more time with the vehicle, as should you.